All right, our final speaker of the day is Stacey Bradshaw. Stacey worked for the Chowan Basin Soil and Water Conservation District for 20 years before returning to college to earn her bachelor's degree in agriculture at Virginia State University. Stacey is currently a Farm Bill specialist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service in Virginia. There, she manages the Resource Conservation Partnership Program and the Source Water Protection Area Program. She also coordinates the state's Technical Service Provider Program, represents Virginia on the Chesapeake Bay Leadership Team, and is Virginia's liaison for NRCS's Chesapeake Bay initiatives. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you, Samantha, for that warm welcome, and I appreciate Jane for inviting me to speak to you here today. Is this the clicker to advance?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So I'm here to talk about collaborating with local groups on cleaner water here in the Commonwealth. So you've heard all day about ways and research that's being done on drinking water, and I want to share with you some of the ways that Natural Resource Conservation Service is helping to prevent contamination and degradation of our source water in Virginia. So we've had a long-term commitment to conservation. This slide shows the numbers that we have committed as an agency over the last 10 years. So starting in 2011 through 2021, we've provided over $300 million in financial assistance and technical assistance to landowners and producers on 1.5 million acres in the Commonwealth. And our average obligation over the last 5 years is about $33 million. So one thing I'd like to talk to you about today is the source water protection program. And for purposes for NRCS, source water is defined here on the board as the places that drinking water comes from, whether it's a river, a stream, lake, reservoir, springs, or groundwater. And then our agency is tasked at providing strategies for maintaining and safeguarding that drinking water on agricultural and forest, non-industrial forest lands. We also use targeted conservation practices to accomplish that goal. So some of the states, well, not some, but all of the states are tasked with being able to collaborate with state agencies, community water systems, and EPA. And we started the Source Water Protection Area Program in 2015 under the Farm Bill that we currently have, which is 2018. So we're coming up on 4 years of information and data and assistance to landowners for source water protection areas. We identify local priorities for the drinking water, whether it's ground or surface. We do this by working with our partners, and we also use local work groups through soil and water conservation districts and extension and other areas and agencies that help decide what local priorities are, and then we take all that into consideration when we're planning for the next year's source water protection areas. We dedicate 10% of our funds every year of our annual financial assistance dollars to source water protection. And so far, under the State Technical Committee, we've had assistance from Region 3 EPA, the City of Lynchburg, Tetra Tech, which works with the Department of Health, the Groundwater Protection Council, and USGS, along with other consultants, maybe from the Northern Virginia area, some of the water councils up there. So this map shows the 2022 source water protection high priority areas by types of system, whether it's groundwater, surface water, or both. And this just gives you an overall sense of the entire United States and those territories that we also cover. This one happens to be the resource concerns, whether it's aquifer depletion, water quality, or both. And you can see again, it's very similar to the map previously shown. So in 2019, we receive our instructions under national bulletins. And within that national bulletin, it outlines resource concerns that we need to target using environmental concerns or risk factors. So you can see those listed here on the screen. In 2021, we began assigning points to these particular risk assessments. We did not, however, assign points to risk assessments for water system violations, populations within the source water protection area, or livestock access, because that one specifically, because that's one of our goals, is to exclude livestock. And that's very difficult to actually pinpoint how much access livestock has with our staff levels at the current moment. So these points were given to all these different areas, totaled, and that's how we came up with the areas that we wanted to target for 2022. So you'll see, going back a little bit, in 2019 and 2020, we had a very small space, and I know it's very hard to see, but this is Luray and Woodstock, and those were the two areas that we focused on the first 2 years of this program. And we used that list of conservation practices to do what we felt were the best ways to get conservation on the ground in these source water protection areas. So targeting those practices in that area was the first 2 years of the program. And then in 2021, we expanded our reach, and you can see that all those orange blobs are hydrologic units at the 12th level. And so we increased from just those two areas of Luray and Woodstock up to 7% of the land area in the Commonwealth. We have a maximum of 20% that we can target. And this slide here shows how much dollars and how many practices were put in that fiscal year 2021. You can see that for watering facilities, that's a high number. Fence is $792,000, and the highest in the number is access control, with 104 separate practices that were installed and obligated for that year. In fiscal year 22, we again increased our source water protection areas quite significantly. And the next slide, I believe, it shows exactly how much. But we used, again, that risk assessment point system for this particular year we're in right now. And you can see the difference there between FY21 and FY22. We went from 7% total land cover up to 19%. We went from 91 HUCs to 207, and almost tripled or doubled the amount of land acres that we were covering with those targeted source water protection areas. Also, in FY21 and 22, we expanded the list of conservation practices that we would be targeting. We added karst sinkhole treatments. We added some irrigation. This year, there is going to be probably an addition to spring development for this list to address those concerns. And then in fiscal year 21, we had a total of 47 contracts, 28 addressing 28 different HUCs for 5,000 acres at $2.64 million. This year, we're on target to at least reach those numbers and hopefully exceed them, as we have 139 contracts remaining to obligate between now and September the 30th. So we are on target to at least meet our 2021 goals. So you'll see here the colored areas, not the yellow, but the darker colored areas here, are the number of contracts that NRCS had in those particular hydrologic units for source water protection practices that were on that list I showed earlier. So what we're going to do for this year, we just had our first meeting, our kickoff meeting for fiscal year 23 this morning. So what we're going to use this map for is to identify the areas that may or may not need to be in a source water protection area, and see and investigate why we're not getting additional applications in some of these source water protection areas, to try and hone in and redefine what we're trying to accomplish with the source water protection areas. So the highest number was 7, and then the lowest was a 1, and there are several of them throughout the state. So now I'll switch gears just a little bit, because this program, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, also deals with water quality. It's a little bit different, and it comes at it from also a partnership, but it's a lot more detailed with partners. So the RCPP overview, it encourages partners to collaborate with producers to restore and sustainably use natural resources. It is a co-investment between NRCS partners and producers, so everyone is contributing to the success of the RCPP program. We have, in Virginia, we have all of the scales, if you will. We have one project that is a single county out in Franklin. They are addressing dairies. We have, based on watershed, we have 2 practices that focus on entirely the Chesapeake Bay, and then we have a whole state, and then we have several multi-state projects. So it can be widespread and can target the same resource concerns in a lot of different areas, and again across state lines. So that's fortunate. As far as national resource concerns go, you can see the list there, and we are tasked every proposal cycle to address administration priorities, and this past year they were climate smart agriculture, urban agriculture, and then racial justice and equity. So any proposal that came in for the new fiscal year 23 had to at least address one of those priority concern areas. The RCPP principles changed quite dramatically with the new Farm Bill 2018, and it began to focus on 4 core principles that you see here on the screen. Impact, meaning effective and compelling solutions that address more than one natural resource priority, and to help solve those natural resources challenges. Then partner contributions, that's simply the money and the in-kind contributions that the partners are bringing to the table to help offset or leverage the NRCS dollars that we're putting towards the project. It has to be a one-to-one, a minimum of a one-to-one match. A lot of the time, the practices or the proposals are anywhere from a 1.5 match up to $2 that the partners are bringing to the table for every $1 that NRCS is putting in the program, and that includes financial and technical assistance dollars. Then innovation, is the project innovative? Is it using new technology? Is it bringing partners to the table that weren't before considered a good fit for RCPP? Is it using ideas and guidelines as well as the flexibilities that RCPP offers to get the work done on the ground? And then partnership and management is, how well does the partner manage the program? How well have they worked with producers? Have they managed large, significant budgets before? So that goes back to their experience and expertise and the ability to manage these multi-million-dollar projects. So in the Farm Bill, under the 2018 Farm Bill, RCPP was redefined from the 2014 Farm Bill in that it became a standalone line item in the budget with $300 million annually. There are funding pools. There used to be three: a national, a state, multi-state, and the critical conservation area. Now they have eliminated the national funding pool, and so it's split 50-50 between the conservation, critical conservation areas and state, multi-state projects. We do have a critical conservation area in the Chesapeake Bay, so we are able to partner with some of our bay states on projects, and the list of projects that we have had in Virginia, there's a handout on the back table, or the registration table, also along with the source water protection flyer and fact sheet if you'd like to pick that up. It'll give you more details about each individual project that we have here in Virginia. So if a participant is going, or a partner is going to participate in the RCPP program and they want to focus on the Chesapeake Bay, they have to do water quality degradation and inadequate habitat for fish, wildlife, and invertebrates. Those two have to be in their proposal some kind of way. They can have additional priorities, as we saw with the administrative, those being the climate change. So that's just, those are two are the must. And then the producer contracts deal with land management, that's putting conservation practices on the ground to address the resource concerns. Some projects have a rental. For instance, if a producer is taking vital ag land out of row crop production and putting it in a pasture situation, we can help offset that lost income with rental payments. And then we have easements, and some of you may be interested in the public works and watersheds aspect of RCPP. So partners, the lead organization is the one that we enter into an agreement with, and these partners can be as widespread as nationally recognized Indian tribes, municipality water systems, could be groups that have a long history of participating and working with landowners. For instance, we have several projects with Trout Unlimited, Sustainable Chesapeake, and the Nature Conservancy. So producers and landowners, they are those that engage with the project partners. They carry out the conservation activities on their land, whether it's cropland or forest land. And then the land available is agricultural and non-forest, private forest land, and then the public lands, with the caveat that the public lands have to be the producers and the area. Those producers are doing practices that benefit the entire watershed. It's the benefits are on private land and not on the public land. So also a change in the Farm Bill 2018 was the focus on outcomes. So Congress got the idea that they wanted to see what kind of outcomes were coming from the RCPP program. So we started having to report, well, we've always had to report, but now we do an annual report to Congress on RCPP projects, and that includes the inputs, the funding, the technical assistance, and the customer service that we're doing, activities, which is conservation planning and the outreach, outputs, how many contracts and practices and dollars are we getting out there, and then the big one that they really want to see is what are the outcomes of each RCPP project, both from an environmental aspect, a social, and an economic. So this is brand new. We've just started doing this portion of the RCPP for the last few years. And it's interesting to see. The partners have to develop ways they're going to monitor the outcomes. So they have to, it's a lot of prior planning that goes into a project. So NRCS traditionally has a backlog of applications to fund through our EQIP and CSP programs. RCPP is one way that we can help offset those funds and get more conservation on the ground, because this does not have to follow the same rules as EQIP and CSP, and it's a separate pot of money that we can do some of the same conservation practices, but in a much more targeted area. So RCPP is good to help offset that backlog that we and other states continually have. So in this past fiscal year, we only had one RCPP project that was actually active and accepting applications, and that was with the Virginia Marine Sciences with oyster restoration over in the Chesapeake Bay area. We used EQIP dollars despite having an active RCPP contract and agreement with them, because the agreement was not finalized before the fiscal year started. So we put in $445,000 of EQIP dollars to help maintain the forward momentum that the oyster restoration project is doing. And it's in a renewal, so not only have they been doing oyster restoration for 5 years, now they have another 5 to give it a total of 10, which is the option for all projects. They're a minimum of 5 years with a maximum of 10 if they're selected for a renewal. So you can see over a 5 or a 10-year period how much impact that this RCPP program can have. So the 3 project areas that we had new in fiscal year 21 include, and I'm sorry it's kind of light, our 3 new ones are Virginia Headwaters Restoration Initiative with Trout Unlimited. I'll go over a little bit more detail in just a second, but you can see the widespread area that we have for just these 3 new ones. So Trout Unlimited is focusing on riparian corridor restoration, habitat and water quality improvements, and they're bringing $2.9 million to the table, along with NRCS dollars. So that's $2.9 million that's going to go out to landowners within those counties up in the Shenandoah Valley to help improve water quality. Our next is Capital Region Land Conservancy. This is our first easement project under RCPP. Easements can be either entity owned or US owned. This one is going to be entity owned. Their target is to put in between 2,500 and 10,000 acres, and they have $2 million to successfully do that. This program will start in the new fiscal year, October. The last one is a renewal. So this is going into the 6th and 7th year of the RCP project. They had a little bit higher budget in the first round. They have right at $2 million this time, and their focus is water quality improvement. And this is a multi-state between Tennessee and Virginia on the Clinch Powell watershed out in Lee, Russell, and Scott counties, Virginia portion of that. So that covers or ends my talk, and I'll entertain any questions you have.
Do we have any questions?
Great. I'm not standing oh, there is a question. Okay.
I noticed that you had I guess in more recent years, a focus on the karst counties.
Mm-hmm.
And are there any examples of projects that you're doing, maybe RCPP or source water, either one, focused on septic systems?
We do not have anything. So NRCS is, sometimes our hands are tied with the types of conservation practices that we can offer. We have a national list, and septic systems are not on that list, unfortunately. I know that that would be a good practice to have, but because it's not necessarily ag-related, we can't focus our attention on a septic system like that. But with that being said, coming from 20 years experience with soil and water conservation districts, there are some that do work with septic system pump outs. I know Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District had a septic system pump out program. I'm not sure if they're still doing that, offering that, but they did at one time have that. So that's just one example.
Hi.
Hi.
I come from Prince William County, and when you were showing the water protection areas, I saw that there was an increase in Prince William County compared to the previous years.
Mm-hmm.
So what triggered NRC to protect those areas? What triggered them to have that increase in terms of water protection areas? Thank you.
Sure. So one of the reasons, and the main reason, was assigning points to those risk assessments. What were the TMDL numbers for nitrogen, alkalinity, phosphorus? Is it a sole source aquifer? How much water is pulling from community water systems? So that there was a list of those risk assessments that we assign points to, and that's where the increase came from. For example, we really focused on sole source aquifers, and that's one reason that the entire Eastern Shore became part of the source water protection area for this fiscal year, is because that's where they rely on their drinking water from a sole source aquifer. So, but there was that list. And I'll be glad to share that with you.